Hello and welcome once again to the 19th episode of Authors Chat with Beth Jordan. And just to remind our listeners that this is the channel for an opportunity for indie authors, self-published authors to talk about themselves, to talk about their work, their writing and their books, and to give them a voice. Because in the world of publishing, it's very difficult for self-publishers like ourselves to actually get our books out there. So by having this channel, I'm hoping that it's going to give my next guest an opportunity to tell her story and how she came to write her wonderful book. And welcome, Becky Davies.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And Becky has written a wonderful story, a children's story. Is that right? It's a children's genre, right, Becky?
Yes. Yeah, for children aged 9 to 12 years old, really.
Okay, thank you. And the story is called Ingenious Creatures and the Secrets of Stumpery Hollow. And we're going to start by Becky actually reading the prologue to give you a little hint of the magic of this story. Over to you, Becky.
A silvery glint of an eye appeared in the darkness, rumbling and a growl from deep within. The earth cracking, then grinding is heard at the bottom of the pile. Later, a flickering of majestic, multicoloured crest rises upwards. There are secrets here, and wild-spun magic, but nobody knew, not yet. Did they? Extending under the scraggy mound, so much more was revealed. It wasn't just a weather-beaten, barren wasteland. It was a whole new kingdom.
And it certainly is a whole new kingdom. I have read Becky's book, and I love the characters. But before we go anywhere near the story, Becky's got a whole load of wonderful and interesting things to talk about and how she came to actually write a book. So, Becky, from what I was reading, you are a photographer. Tell us about this aspect of you and how does it relate to your book? How did it come about?
I've loved photography since I had my first camera. I was given my first camera at a very early age. And through the years, I had different makes and models. I've suffered chronic anxiety in my life, and I find hiding behind the lens, I found a way of communicating as well too. I suppose I felt really safe behind the camera. I could just opt out of everybody around me. It was my camera, and it was a way of self-expression. I could express myself.
Mm-hmm. Right, okay. And there's quite a lot more about how you developed your photography further. I believe you were telling me that you had been ill at some point.
Yes, I've done photography for many years. It wasn't anything that would lead to book writing. It was just I'm very, very into the environment, being out in nature. I've always been outside. I call it like blue health, when you can see like the water and the skies and the rivers and waterfalls. I've always been into that, and geography. So I think that sort of intertwined with the photography somehow. And the more I took photography, I wasn't just taking a picture of a flower or a tree. I'd really look inside those things, like the flowers, and you'd find like a bee or a bug on it. So I was looking inside each object.
Yeah.
And it just went on from there, really.
Okay. So your story, Ingenious Creatures, it's a lot about the outdoors, about nature, about animals. Did you take photographs of animals as well?
No, not at all. I walked around the park, which we'll discuss further later. I walked around the park, and as I said, I was looking at different objects, and I saw things in objects that people might just walk by. So I've always had a very creative mind.
Yeah.
I do a lot of watercolouring and drawing, and it all links in. The photography all links into all of these things. It's sort of like an extension.
Okay.
So I've always found it better to express myself through media, different media, than I have actually like talking to people. I don't like big groups and things like that, for example. So walking around the park, there was different trees in the park. Sometimes the wind blows them over and things like that. Sometimes I cut them back because they're diseased. And I looked at the trees and the trunks, and I started taking pictures. And then when I get home, I never ever edit. You know, the tip is to always edit when you get home, because if you edit a picture and you think, I can't get that back. So it's remembering that each picture captures a moment that you'll never ever get back again. So I did a lot of that. When I came home, several of the trees to me looked like different objects. There was one that looked like it had a cauldron in it, and one looked like it had an elephant with a stumpy trunk. And that's when it started. It just started in my head, and I could sort of see like a visual film strip inside my head of what I wanted to write about.
Okay. So that's really interesting, because I love taking pictures of the barks of trees, because I too can see, and when I've seen a tree in a shape, I think, oh my God, that's remarkable, and I'll take a photograph. And I don't know if you do that, but I try to take a photograph at an angle that really accentuates the image that I'm actually trying to see. So your photography, from what you're saying, little by little, has helped you create characters in your mind for the book that you're now writing? So which came first? How did it, I mean, your photography came first and your book came afterwards. How did you come to actually write your book?
That's quite a long story, right? Really. I had, if I go back a little bit, I had, I was diagnosed with cancer in 2016, and they said it was treatable but incurable. So they held off on treatment, and I had 5 years on what they call active monitoring, or watch and wait. So they waited until it progressed to a certain time before they treated it. I was diagnosed stage 4. So we went into COVID, obviously, and we were all shut down for that year. And I didn't have any hospital appointments. There was no scans or anything. So we were all at home, weren't we?
Yes.
And then March, I went back to work. I was a special educational needs children teacher for children aged 2 to 4. I'd done that for 19 years. I'd actually been diagnosed while I was working, so I carried on working full time. And in the June of 2021, they invited me in for a PET scan. They said it had spread during the lockdown, and they wanted to give me treatment. So I started treatment in August 2021. I had 5 months of chemotherapy, really strong chemotherapy. And they said the best case for a longer remission would be to have a stem cell transplant. So I had that in January 2022. I was in hospital for 21 days in Berks in London. I wasn't allowed any visitors or anything because of the COVID. There was nothing. I was totally on my own. So when I came home, I went straight back into isolation because of my immunity. I couldn't go anywhere near anybody. And in those months, I became agoraphobic. I just found I just couldn't go out. I was so scared. I'd had so much time almost institutionalized at home. This was the norm to me. So one day I called Macmillan, and she asked me what my hobbies and interests were. And I said, well, I like photography. I like a bit of writing. I like drawing, creativity. So I said to her, look, I've become agoraphobic. I can't come out, I can't go out and do what I wanted to do. So she said, take your camera into the back garden and just start off taking a few shots just in your back garden, because you know it's enclosed. So I did that, did it for a few days. We've got loads of bird feeders, so I was watching the birds and things like that. And after a few weeks, she called me back and she said, how's things going? So I said, well, I'm all right. I'm out in the garden. I'm out in the back garden. I find that quite comfortable. So she said to me, have you got any green spaces around you? So I said, well, yeah, there's a public garden. It's about 10 minutes away. So she says, when your husband's at home, ask him if he'll take you up there. And that's how it began, really. I took my camera up there. I knew he was there. He's into photography as well. We both do it. And I just started pictures. And from there, the book just sort of formed in my head, really.
Okay. So that's a very, very, I think it's a lovely way to be able to gather yourself together and start your story.
Yes, it is.
Because I'm guessing now, and I'm just guessing, as you're walking around, as you said, the idea of the book formed. So, what was the first part of the book that started to really come up for you? Was it the main characters or the animal characters or just the plot? How did it start for you?
I think the first thing, I was in the park and I was walking around,
Hmm.
and all the logs and stuff they'd chucked down, they'd chopped down, they'd piled them up at the back of the park, and they all looked to me like different creatures, and they'd actually labelled it the Stumpery.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's a funny word. I've never heard of the Stumpery before.
No.
I've never, So I came back and I sort of looked it up, and it's just like lots of wood, and it encourages bugs and wildlife and things to live in there.
Okay.
And then I thought to myself, I flipped it upside down, and I thought, yeah, but what could be living underneath the Stumpery? So, and that is when it started. And then I thought about the different creatures that you find in a park.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of wild ones that you wouldn't find in a park, you know. But yeah, that's how it started. Really, it was the Stumpery, really, for me.
Okay, so it was the animals that first came into the story.
Yes.
They developed, yeah. And there are some. I mean, yes, I don't want to give too much away about your book because I would like the listeners to actually go out there and want to buy and read it. But there's one. My favorite one is the peacock. And remind me of what he's called.
Lord Edwin.
Lord Edwin.
Yes, yeah.
And he has a very English name.
Yes, it is, because I wanted him to be posh. I wanted him to walk around and strut as if he owned the place. He has a monocle, and but when he talks, he's as common as anything.
Yes,
like Watcher and Hire and all of that. So yeah, I wanted it to be a surprise. So a lot of the animals in the book they've got another side to them. It's just not what you see. The more you read, the more you realise that they're talented in different ways.
Yes. Yeah. I think you draw the character. I'm not certain if you draw the character because of the name of the character or the names you've given them, or the other way around. But I think every animal that you have written about really comes to life. I found them wonderful. Little Pip, the dormouse, as an example. I loved him, and I love that is that the little one that can read minds.
Yes, he's telepathic.
Yes. So I love the way I love what you've done. You've really created something special with these animals. There's lots of animal stories, and I love the fact that animals talk. I think we all love the fact that animals talk, and all these animated movies that we see with the voiceover of different actors. So I think what you've done, you've really created. First of all, the animal kingdom story is wonderful. It could almost be just them on their own, but besides that, there's some wonderful children in the story. Do you want to tell us about these children?
Yes, I thought that I'd like to do it from a different angle, and I looked at children who have different come from different backgrounds, some harder than others. So I thought I'd base it like sort of in a residential home, and I thought that I'd have the two main characters, which are Ned and Ramona, forge a friendship through the different hobbies they liked. So I wanted. And they've got different backgrounds, like Ned's lost his parents and things like that. I wanted to incorporate things that actually happen to children. And I think, so when they read the book, they can read it, and some of them can like relate to what's in there. So obviously there's other children in there. There's a couple of bullies. There's a little girl who can speak Greek, foreign languages. So it was just a variety, really.
Yeah. So these children are the children that you met along the way from when you were because you did nursery teaching, is that correct?
I did. I was a special educational needs manager at a nursery. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. So are any of these children drawn from real life characters, or are they all fictitious, entirely fictitious?
No, they're all fictitious. They're very fictitious. Some of the traits of the children, Ned and Ramona, I like mine. Like Ned is very anxious and very withdrawn. He gets scared easily. That's his like persona. And then Ramona is the flip side. She's the bold, the brave, the courageous. She'll just go in and all that lot, So I'm not like that. I just wish I was like that. So I wanted them to like spark off each other, sort of thing. But like the point of the photography and everything, they're passionate at photography, they're passionate at drawing and things. So all of that is like incorporated from my life.
Yeah, yeah, and I like the way as the story unfolds, Ned becomes much stronger, much more confident, in a way through the help of Ramona. And yeah, I don't want to say it again too much, but I like the way you've actually developed these children's characters. They you can really see them blossoming. So that's, I think, a really good message for children when they're reading.
Mm.
How through gaining confidence, because as to me, it's like Ned is gaining confidence as the story progresses. So I think that's a really wonderful way to engage children. So you have a long career working with children, and it may be repeating itself, but at what point did that through your career? Is that what one sort of let me get the words right? Is that what started you to write, or was it through your illness in photography and taking photographs and seeing the way the barks of the trees were developing, and then you started to draw characters from all of that? So did your career initiate you wanting to write, or was it two separate things?
No, I think it was two separate things.
All
I've
right.
always believed that children should access books, however old they are.
Hmm.
I really enjoyed one of the best parts of working at nursery was reading to the children at circle time and story time. I'd always vote myself up for that
Yeah.
out of everything.
Yeah.
I think even if a child can't read, the pictures can tell 1,000 words.
Yeah.
Um, but my writing has always been a passion. Since chemo, I lost 10 to 20% of my hearing. I suffer from tinnitus, which is the chemo's caused that. So
Yeah.
I find reading, I find it really hard now to retain the written word
Hmm.
when I'm reading, which is
Yes.
frustrating because reading was another major hobby of mine. I've read since I was taught to read.
Hmm.
So in hospital, I began writing a journal. I wrote as much or as little as I could each day
Yeah.
because I thought I could help others, to
Yes.
support people, because it's a very lonely place when you're going through that journey.
Yeah.
And then when I came home, I started writing a bit of poetry because I
Hmm.
think a lot of what's going in your head, if you get it out of your head and put it down the pen, it helps you. It's therapeutic.
Yeah.
And then, as I said, after the isolation, I went into the park and I was just inspired to write. I thought the next progression was to write a book.
Yeah. Yeah. And how long did it take you to write your book?
Um, well, it was published on Amazon last November.
Hmm.
So I would say probably about a year, probably
Oh,
about a year, I
yeah.
reckon.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
And the illustrations are like very gentle sketches, almost sometimes like a shadow of the animals, of really. Did you do those yourself?
The animals I didn't. During COVID, when I was in the isolation after COVID,
Mm.
I had a look on Facebook and I was looking for people who were illustrators,
Hmm.
and I found a couple, and one of the ladies I used to do all the animals,
Mm.
and then everything else in the book I've done myself. So I'm more into, like, I can draw architecture and all sorts of things like that, trees and flowers.
Yeah.
But animals I've never been ever good at. And I thought I just wanted a picture at the start of each chapter
Yes.
just to
Yes.
break it up.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
didn't want it to be a coloured book,
Yeah.
picture colours, because it was for a different age group.
Hmm.
And I didn't want it to be like Harry Potter where there's no pictures, you just read and read and read.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted short, punchy chapters as
Yes.
well. So, to keep the reader entertained.
Yeah. I think you succeeded at that because I actually liked it as a children's book. I liked that it wasn't too much explanation. It was just enough for them to really be engaged all the time. I wanted to, turn the page and the pictures. The one picture I really found very fascinating was this character Anaya, the
And
lady,
yes.
Anaya, the lady in the tree.
Hmm.
I'm would love to know what happens to her because towards the end of the story, things change for her that she's not happy with. And I'm hoping that at some point, that we get to find out about what happens to that lovely lady who's very ancient, isn't she? She's an ancient character, in fact. She's
She is, yes, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. She comes from like the 1800s, and
So
through
her,
no
just,
fault of
just
her own.
yeah, so
Yeah,
just out of interest, so she's in 1800s. So I'm guessing the story is set in our modern time, in our
it is in
time.
our modern times.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
yeah,
so
it
she's
is.
in 1800s. So
Mm.
was that based upon a tree that would have been in the park for as long as that? Is that where that all came from?
No, no, it comes from the backstory really, because I just didn't want it to be natural world and geography. I wanted to teach the children a bit about history,
Yeah.
and I wanted her to come from the past.
Okay.
So the baddie,
Yeah.
Carrick, it was part of him that
Ah.
transported her,
Ah,
or she was
yes.
transported at the same time as him to the park.
Yeah.
So he's
Yeah.
obviously the goblin, and she
Yeah.
was put in this tree that she can't escape from.
Yes.
So
And
that came about by the photography, because when I was doing the photography, I could see this woman in a tree. You've probably seen the picture in the book.
yes.
I've got a photo that looks identical to that, and that's how that came about originally.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I like that there's just this right element of magic, and the magic is also unusual. I like your magic. I'm not going to say again. I think I've said this 3 times already. I'm not going to give too much away, but I like these elements of magic and the past and Terence, one of the main characters. Interesting, interesting man. So I hope listeners that you are getting very excited at the prospect of going out and buying Becky's book and reading it, because I think as an adult, forget the fact that you're an adult, it's just a story, not of make believe, but I think of hope. There's a lot of hope and
Mm,
transformation in the story. And that's what I love about this. When there's another writer who I've interviewed where his story is the main character's young boy, like Ned, and to see him, what I would call, he's like on his hero's journey, and it's so transformative. And I like what I'm seeing already with Ramona and Ned, how these two children are growing up and how innovative they are, and they're quick-witted, and they're just very lovable characters, each in their own way. So I think you've really drawn the characters of the human characters, the animal characters, the language they use. And how unique each animal is. I think that's what's really special about your story. They're very, very unique,
mm.
the way you've portrayed them. So really, congratulations on what you've done so far. That's really
Thank
wonderful.
you. Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So tell me, what would you like listeners to take from what they've heard from you today?
I think I'd like uh for them to think about like writing for themselves. It's the confidence. You don't have to just produce one big massive book in nobody can do that.
Hmm.
Just writing each day, maybe doing a journal, maybe doing poetry.
Hmm.
One of the simple ways is to take a photo, even if it's on your phone,
Yeah.
and then come home and maybe write a line about it.
Hmm.
So I find the photography, the best time to go out is like the golden hour, and that's when the
Yes.
sun's just setting, because
Yeah.
obviously you get the sun reflected, and it makes everything look a different colour to what it
Yeah.
normally is. So
Yeah.
you just take a photo and you write a line about it. So, and then,
Hmm.
think about also what you like hobbies. That's where it came from, your interests.
Hmm.
Think about whether you'd like to help or teach somebody,
Hmm.
put some knowledge in if you've got a field of knowledge you'd like. So that's how I've gathered all those experiences to
Yeah.
sort of like help these children,
Hmm.
and help other people in life.
Yeah. Yeah. And are you still involved in any children's activities at all?
No, no, no. Since I have immunotherapy every 8 weeks.
All right. Okay.
So because I'm in first remission,
Yes.
so I have immunotherapy, so I can't work with children or anything anymore, which was quite heart wrenching, really, because I did 19 years, and
Hmm.
because I specialised in special educational needs, I
Yes.
found it I find it quite difficult. I really do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was in a rut for quite a while.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, yeah.
So, I've asked you what would you like your listeners to maybe think about, but
Mm.
how can your experience of what you have been through and your writing really help others in similar situations,
Uh,
or if they
Well, the
want to
writing,
write
if
a
they're going
journal?
through experiences like I have, I would say that try and do a journal, you know, um, try and jot down things. It's also good for your mind because it clears your mind.
Yeah.
But sometimes in the most random things, like I do, something will just flash into my head. like a funny scenario or something, and I jot that down. And
Yeah.
you can have quite a few jots and notes. Post-it notes, my favourite friend, I
Yeah.
always find. And I always have like a book and a pen by the side of the bed, because at the most random times in the day, you'll think of something, you think, that's quite a good idea. So
Mm.
you'll be surprised when you write things down and you collect them in a little pile, and then you look back at them and you think, I could form a story out of that.
Yeah.
It's quite I don't know, you're surprised by yourself, really. Because when I
Mm.
read back some of the bits of my book, I think to myself, did I write that? Do you know what I mean? Where did that come from? So you sort of like, but yeah, well, there
Yeah.
must be something in it, because I've got my second one I'm writing now. So
Oh, I was just going to
mm,
ask you, because what was very clever in your book is at the very end of the book, there are three, I'd say, three mini chapters with no more than about 6 lines.
yeah.
Terence, Ned, Ramona. And I thought, oh, what a very clever way to keep us as though we're on a cliffhanger. Very clever. So I was guessing that there was going to be another story because I've got to find out what happens to Ramona and Ned and Terence and just wait for the second one. So how far are you with your second book?
About 5 or 6 chapters in. My illustrators, I've got 2 illustrators this time.
Yeah.
I've got Stacey as well helping me. She's doing all the children because I want the pictures of the children. We
Yeah.
had a brief picture, didn't we, Ramona and
Yes.
Ned,
Yes.
which my animal artist did.
Yeah.
So this one, she's done all the children and a couple of characters in my new book.
Hmm.
So this book was entirely based in England. They visit a seaside town, which is all factual, looked everything up.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lady who owns a tea room in Saltburn, which is where these children go for their summer holiday outing.
Yeah.
And I met her during COVID, and we
Hmm.
became firm friends. And I met her a couple of years ago, and that's where her tea rooms and everything comes into the book. Everything is all factual. So
Oh.
this one, I want to be abroad. So I've done it abroad. So all of this will be learning new cultures, what they eat,
Hmm.
So I wanted to flip it.
Yeah.
So they're traveling now,
Yeah.
and they'll be to this new area.
Yeah. And are they much older than they are now? This similar sort of.
No, this is in the same summer holidays. This is in the same summer holidays. So obviously, you know what the cliffhangers at the end.
Yes.
So the beginning of the book starts with Ramona and what happened in that final chapter,
Mm-hmm.
and then it'll continue on from then. So
Ah, very good. I will wait with bated breath. So, where can we buy your book from?
it's on Amazon. I went on to Amazon last year. I used a public publisher, but I put it onto Amazon, and it's
Okay,
in paper book and it's in ebook presently.
okay, good.
Next month, near where I live, they've got a place called the Art Place, and it's a
Hmm.
charity hub. And people make like wooden things and jewelry and stuff like that, and they paint pictures and they do photography. And they're in for new talents as well. They help people with new talents, and
Hmm.
whatever they sell, they take a small percentage, and that goes into that charity, which I quite like the idea of that.
Yeah,
I like, do you know what I mean, helping other people. So
yeah,
if it's helping children expand their reading, or if it's helping some charity,
yeah,
I'm all for that.
yeah, yeah. That's good. So, as a final thought, what would you like to feel after our chat that our listeners can really benefit from reading your story?
I think by writing it, I just wanted to like encourage children to like sort of like get out from behind a screen and, do you know what I mean? Look at the literacy and the rich words around you, because you learn so much. And it doesn't have to be a massive encyclopedia or a dictionary.
Mm.
There's stories out there across the board, whatever age your child is,
Yes.
um, for them to enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. True. I mean, children's stories, they, I'm not certain. I know romance is the biggest selling genre, but
Mm.
children's stories is not far, far behind. When I go into bookstores and I see the amount of children's stories and the amount of people writing children's stories, where do you see your children's story fitting in the genre of children's story? So it's a question I hadn't planned on asking you, but where do you see your children's story fitting in?
I'd like to hope it'll be like in shops, like proper shops, like Waterstones or something one day.
Mhm.
I don't think I'll be ever as high up as JK or David Williams and that sort. You know,
You can be.
I don't compare myself to any of those. I'm just
Yeah,
like a new author that's just started out.
yeah,
So I'm hoping one day it will take me somewhere. I
right.
continue to write,
Yes,
whether it does or whether it doesn't.
yeah,
So this is a small chance I've got, and I took it.
yeah. And have you approached anybody like Waterstones as an example to?
No, they have a very hard procedure. You have to go through somebody called gardeners or something.
Yes,
There's a lot of intricate bits. It's not
yes.
just simply asking Waterstones to put the book on the shelf.
Hmm.
So as I said, the JKs and the David Williams, they go straight in, don't they? They
Yeah,
publish them and that could just go straight into the shop
yeah.
because it's been happening for years and years.
Hmm.
It's very hard for the new authors to get on that rung of the ladder and proceed up.
Yes, yeah.
So
It's,
this for me is all trial and error. You
yeah.
know?
Yeah. But just as a final question, are there any opportunities for you to create online gatherings with children for you to read to talk about books, to encourage children to even start writing their own stories?
Mm. Yeah, I did think about that. I did think about that quite a lot. I did start a Facebook page, Ingenious Creatures,
Mm.
and I don't know, I had trouble like putting content on there. I didn't want to be too repetitive. I
Yeah.
didn't want to flood it. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it looked like I was like almost nagging, do you know?
Mm.
So I've got my website up and running,
Okay.
ingeniouscreatures.co.uk.
Okay.
So I got that running a few weeks back.
Okay.
So I hope, as this book produced, I should put bits from this book,
Yeah.
snippets and things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Becky, for coming and joining me on this author's chat. I hope that I hope that you have got something from this conversation of ours, and I hope our listeners too will rush out to Amazon and buy Becky's book because I have read her book and I think it's enchanting. It's it really for me is the two characters of Ned and Ramona and the other two characters are a bit of bullies, but all the children, I think Becky has really drawn those characters well. She's made them very empathetic. She's shown their strengths and their weaknesses and how they can be blended together and how you can work together. So congratulations on your first book, Becky. I think it's a wonderful story. I'm looking forward to finding out in the second book what happens to the tree lady. I feel very sad for her.
At this point, I tell you that there's a tree lady in the other land as well.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope one can help the other.
Maybe I'm keeping that secret.
I hope, yes, I hope so too. Thank you so much, Becky Davis, for joining
That's
us
right.
with us
Thank you. Thank you
about this
very much for
time.
having me. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye bye. Bye.